All right, it is 5 o'clock. I'm going to call this facilities committee meeting to order. I'm going to read a brief statement before we get started. It has been a devastating 6 days in the Big Red community. It is hard to put into words what our community has been confronting after last Tuesday's tragic event. We have experienced various degrees of shock, grief, fear, and sadness. I share those same feelings. But even in our darkest moment, there is light. Our teachers and staff have continued putting kids first. Our community, including local law enforcement, hospitals, clergy, business leaders, everyday citizens, and others, has offered support in a myriad of ways. Even those outside our immediate community have sent well wishes and prayers. We are truly surrounded by the best. Today, with the reopening of Belton High School, our community has taken a small step forward. We have a long way to go as we heal in the days and weeks to come, but I have hope for the future in the Big Red community. With that, public comments, I don't see anybody, so we'll move on. Let's get started here. Been looking forward to this meeting for a really long time.
Mr. Facilities Chair and board members, thanks for your time. I just figured I'd sit right here so I can see it easier to see y'all. This is our update on our bond election. And so obviously our job is to now take what the public has said and move forward based on our election results. So we're going to talk a little bit about the election results and a reminder on how we got there. You can see our bond exploration committee timeline. We started this work out last fall, and you can see from September through February where we were, what we had to do as a big picture, an overall picture as a school district. Now we're into where we actually landed on recommendations, and I brought these recommendations to you. In January, we talked about what we were focusing on for growth, aging and evolving facilities, program equity and safety, and then we also noted that this is not the last bond election that we will have to pursue as a school district if we continue to grow. And we talked about after 2027 and on, reminder that we are projected to have 3,100 more students by 2027. And by the end of the decade to be over 18,000 students in our school district. So I share that with you just because I think it's important for us to remember we have some big projects that we need to get working on as quickly as possible because as growth continues, we're going to have the need to continue some of those discussions. We went through the ranking list. You remember that the committee ranked the left-hand column, and we had over $400 million in projects that we've been discussing at that point. The middle column was the superintendent recommendation to you all in January. And then the final right-hand column was where you all landed as a board after the board workshop that we had in this room on those bond projects. Ultimately, we went way ahead here. I don't know why. Sorry about that. Connie, I need your help in landing on preliminary election results. There we go. Ultimately, our community voted during early voting, voted over the weekend, and you can see that Proposition A in Belton ISD, we received 5,617 total votes, and that did pass by over 40 votes. And then you can see Proposition B also passed by a mere 6 votes. So those were obviously very close election results, but we're thankful for the support that our community showed us in the propositions that were out there. Those 2 propositions were the same ones that we have been talking about in all of our bond presentations throughout the spring. We use this slide on a regular basis. What happens if the bond passes and what happens if the bond fails? Obviously, we're focused on that left-hand column now, addressing high priority facility and program needs, being able to move away from long-term portables, bringing our aging facilities up to similar standards, and doing that without a tax rate increase in the INS tax rate. So that leads us to our next steps, and what we need to be working on is a Belton ISD team, and is a team of 8 as well. First of all, we have a long-range facilities planning team that Mike Morgan is going to go into some detail with you about tonight. give you an overview of that group and getting that group going as we continue to address needs and growth needs in our school district. We're gonna have to work on notice to proceed for elementary number 13 for design. You all remember those discussions from previous board meetings, but we are able to, thanks to the support of our community, get that process moving forward as well. Our financial advisor is gonna work with us on our bond sale timelines. Just a reminder, just because the election results were in, we do not get the bond funding right away. We have to work on those appropriate sales of the bonds.
What is it?
In
July, end of July?
Shooting for end of July, and hopefully have those funded end of July, beginning of August. There are things that we can do, and we'll work with our legal counsel and our financial advisor to get some of the projects going. But the actual receiving of the bond funds, et cetera, is still probably a couple of months out, and it's with pretty aggressive timelines. So just a reminder on all of that. We're gonna work on project timelines. So we do have more design work to do on some of our facilities. We've talked about the effort that you all allowed us to do to get elementary designs together beginning last year and get those two big projects moving. And we feel good about those in the design work that's been done with those. The other designs, and I'll use Southwest Elementary as an example, the design for the expansion at Southwest Elementary. We actually have to go through a process with an architect to do some of those things. So we're gonna work on getting those project timelines together for all of the design work for each project and also the construction work for each project. And we'll be able to get those out, meaning that we'll be able to see project start dates, end dates, and milestones along the way so that we know over the next few years how to make sure that we're taking full advantage of market conditions, pushing appropriate construction projects forward as quickly as possible, and trying to get some things done because our taxpayers said we could. And so those are the next timelines that you'll see us start developing. We dove into those discussions immediately, and so we'll keep moving forward. We are going to work on establishing a bond oversight committee as we move forward into this time frame. I want to fully make sure that our community knows how we're progressing with these bond funds, make sure that there's open, honest, transparent dialogue about that, and that there's some very thoughtful updates on how the project completion is going in all of this. I think that is a good thing for us as a growing school district. So we will be working with you all to establish a bond oversight committee so that we have that transparency in our school district. And then obviously a bond projects website, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we are getting, I don't know another word to say it, real time, but as real-time updates as we can on a website on these bond projects so that our community can keep up with those and see how the tax dollars are being spent that we're utilizing for these bond projects. So we are going to be actively working on those things. Are there any questions on those next steps items?
I do on those the bottom two. Is that, did we do that in the last bond, or is that like standard practice? I guess talk a little bit more about, I mean.
Oh, remember that.
No, I don't.
Something new?
I don't believe, and you all can tell me because I wasn't here, but I don't believe that we had a bond oversight committee. Typically what that is a group of community members that you bring in conjunction with staff members, and you receive quarterly reports on where you are with the financials of the school district, with the bond funds, and with the projects. So it's really about finances and projects and how we're progressing on those bond funds that have been approved.
And we did not like that.
I like that idea.
I think that's in the world that we live in today, I think that's a thoughtful move that we need to do, and it's especially important for us as we get into a potential cadence of bond elections as a growing school district, growing as fast as we are. I think these types of steps really help us solidify the transparency and the information access that our public needs about these, so that come time when we have to talk about future bonds, it's been a constant communication and not just a one-time communication. In the bond projects website, you can see various models throughout the nation of that. I think with technology, even since 2017, you can see more real-time updates and more information is presented in a lot of districts. And so we are exploring what that looks like for our school district based on our current capabilities, but we want to make sure that if I am a member of the public that doesn't interact with school district personnel on a regular basis, but I want to keep up with how these bond projects are progressing, they have the ability to do so.
And do we have staff to be able to make those updates, or is that another FTE, or how does that work?
I think we have the ability to do that. Now, we're obviously with this, when we're kicking into high gear after bond elections happen, and everybody assumes that you kick it into high gear before the election. It really gets kicked into kind of a hyper gear after the election happens. And so as we continue to look at that, we will always try to look at ways we can do it with our current staff. I think that's the appropriate approach. That being said, as a growing school district, if something changes in that, we would just bring in that information along the way. But as we continue to grow and add 780 new students and appropriate staff members for the next year, we also have to think about workload and balance for everything.
Something I've been thinking about a lot is the Delta facility. Do we kind of already have an idea of how much land we need, or would it be, what is the plan for that one? That's the one I've been most thinking about.
We're excited about that one. I think there's a couple of ways that we're going to have to debate about which way to approach it. We do not have it doesn't have to be a new build. It could be a remodel, it could be a purchase of a piece of property and a remodel to have what we would need in that, or it could be multiple smaller properties depending on needs as well. So what we will do is go through a design process now that we have the ability to do so, work with an architect, talk about those things, and lighten on the best proposition that we have moving forward on it. For me, and I'll use, let's use two that we talked about often in the bond presentations. You have life skill and transition skills that need to be addressed with our Delta program, and a small home facility might be perfect for that if you outfitted it correctly and made sure you had access appropriately to all of the spaces that you need. Flip side of that, an office environment where you're working on job skills and stuff might look very different. And so you could have separate facilities based on the needs of the students, based on the needs of that program. Doesn't all have to be under one brand new big roof. It could be something that is addressed in various ways. But it also could be a new structure building that we just go ahead and get designed and built as well.
I like that we're looking at it from that aspect, is making sure that we're educating down to that particular student's need.
Yeah.
As opposed to some global building that's gonna, house them all in there, so that's wonderful.
As far as the two elementaries,
Yes.
what's the time frame I'm talking about? Because the discussion out in the public is who's going to get it first? Is the North going to get the elementary first versus the South?
Our current elementary design is elementary 12 is in the north, and it's further along than elementary 13, and that's because of the decisions that we made about finishing the design capacity stuff. And so right now, based on current timelines, north facility would be first based on the designs that we have. We obviously hear on a regular basis from our construction partners and our architectural partners that timelines are tricky right now because of supply chain issues, et cetera. And Mike and I were just talking about this walking in the door. That makes things and timelines a little tricky. But our hope is that we can bring some things to you all in the next month or so where we can push elementary 13 as quickly as we can. And so there would be as little lag time as possible between the two. There are some options that we have discussed, potentially opening elementary 12 to start the 23-24 school year, and elementary 13 in the middle of that school year without shuffling a lot of students around. But a lot of that really depends on how quickly the build can be done. It's beneficial for us as a school district to build as quickly as possible based on rising costs in construction. So we're going to be putting our best foot forward with you all and months here, try to make sure that elementary 13 can move as quickly as possible.
And then on our CTE stuff at Belton High School, do we kind of have a plan already as to say, you know, these 3 programs are going to get the bulk of the reno money? What is the plan moving forward with that?
We do have preliminary plans, and we have to finalize those preliminary plans, but we do have preliminary plans. Mike, do you want to jump in at all?
Yeah, and I would say we kind of assess some needs based on feedback, develop kind of a square footprint, and got some pricing on that footage that we thought we could afford to begin with. After when we worked through with you guys in our workshop model, we went back and put in some more money for some renovation of not only the CTE, that main CTE building, but also some of the other ones that may not be impacted in this phase 1. A lot of that's going to depend on Stephanie, Ben Smith, and their staffs as we start having design work on that, and kind of how we can maximize that money that we budgeted for that, how we can impact the most programs, and start taking some of those oldest and the facilities that are in the worst shape offline over there. So that's kind of the main goal of phase 1, was take some of those facilities offline, build new facilities for as much as we can, and then go back and renovate some of the ones that we can't build new facilities.
And then there was something, I walked Belton High School with Ben over probably about a year ago.
Yeah.
And we went outside and walked around, and part of Ben's vision of, you know, Belton High School was to try to update some of the dated shrubbery and trees and things to kind of uplift just the look and kind of the feel of Belton. Hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that.
I think
part of it.
With major construction projects, you always have some ability to address some of those things. I think for the most part, the projects that were outlined in this bond proposition were really on renovations and addressing the interior items, not the exterior. But I do think whenever you do some of those things, you have the opportunity to address some of the exterior as well. And so we will always explore that. As a building that was initially constructed in 1979, there are some things to address there.
Going back to elementary school for a minute, when we get to the point of naming, I would like to remind us that we've had some previous discussions about naming facilities. And so I really want us to explore, to go back to those conversations when we get to that point.
I think that we probably, as a facilities committee, should get that kicked off rather quickly. There's policy in place, thanks to y'all, that we have new policy that's in place that gives us some guidance on that. And there's some decisions that you all as a facilities committee can make to help us along with that. But we have had a nomination process that has already taken place in the past. And moving forward, we have to just make sure that we address your wishes appropriately.
There was, I know there were some discussions at one of the elementaries already that some of the teachers were kind of throwing their ideas about the South School in. So, yeah, we'll definitely have to kick that one around.
You know, it's interesting on the Miller Heights one too. I got asked this question frequently this spring. What are you going to name the school if Miller Heights goes offline? Are you going to name it Miller Heights again? And I kept saying that's a discussion for our facilities committee and the appropriate committees to have. Obviously, there's benefit to that, and obviously there's some benefit to naming it something new. And so I think if you all would take a look at that policy over the next month here, and when we come back together, I think we're going to have to start diving into those things.
So again, on the elementaries, when we're doing the one in the south, since we're kind of shuffling kids with the new addition at Southwest, and would that renovation be kind of going around at the same time to avoid having to redraw lines more than once? I don't know if I'm asking that correctly, but
So
you know, because
bear
we're going
with
to be.
me on this because I'm not going to draw. I could draw. Maybe I could draw. So bear with me on how I explain this. But if we have elementary 12, and again, I want to manage expectations well. I keep being told it may not be a 12-month construction period based on current timelines. We are pushing for a summer from now, so August of 23, we're trying to get elementary 12 up and running. That based on our timelines that we have outlined for elementary 13 in the south, that school right now probably wouldn't be finished until between October and December, given current timeline expectations. So then we have some choices to make then, because that's in the middle of the school year. What we have discussed as an administrative team is possibly opening that facility as soon as it's completed, like mid-year, for Miller Heights students, and just moving Miller Heights students, and then your attendance boundaries would change over the next summer. So you wouldn't change people's attendance boundaries mid-year, you would wait until the next summer to do that, to fill that school appropriately. What our goal would be is to try and make sure our north attendance boundaries and our south attendance boundaries, you try and do them as simultaneously as possible, but given our current timelines right now, I'm not sure that would happen. Thankful for you and the work that y'all did ahead of time and previous boards and administrators did. By having these clear feeder patterns, you can adjust north attendance boundaries and south attendance boundaries after if you need to. And so I think we'd be in okay shape on that. I don't want to adjust attendance boundaries for a new build and then another new addition at Southwest and try to get that all done at one time for the sake of our families, and it's always a goal. If you think about that timeline too that I mentioned, it gives us this year to get design work done at Southwest Elementary and get potential projects kicked off there, and then the following year to complete those projects, and then so it'd be summer of 2024 being able to have those full new attendance boundaries take place. It's tricky right now because of the timelines. Our architects and our construction crews are wary of my 12-month press for building these schools. So. Well, they're not. You can see Mike and David just smiling right now. I say it on a regular basis, though.
I love a man with faith.
Yes, we're going to keep pushing.
Well, they're not making this up. I mean, that's my. I'm in construction, and it is amazing what isn't available. Some of it, there's no rhyme or reason to it in some cases.
Right.
It's just this week. It was there last week. It's not here this week. So they're not fooling around. It's a very confusing time for people to try to put projects together.
That's right. It makes a confusing time for us to try and know how hard to push and not how hard to push. So
yeah.
Just want to say a thank you. Our obviously tied to your statement at the beginning, I think runs well. We are in we're all still breathing in a lot of ways, but I want to leave clear every chance I get to thank our bond exploration committee members that have dedicated their time and efforts to us over the fall to get us to this point, and our board for the work that you've done to get us to this point, and then finally to the community for 5,000 votes. I think is a pretty good turnout for the history of our school district, so I'm thankful for that. Any questions?
Well, and I'll echo the sentiment for you guys, for the staff, for just the work that y'all have done for this, all the presentations, all of the YouTube videos, all of everything that you guys did. We appreciate you guys as well.
I can promise you that the work of the people that you see over here, and Melinda Golden and a couple others, their leadership was nothing short of phenomenal in all of us. And so the most challenging circumstances that I think we've been faced with, and I couldn't be more thankful and proud they did the good work, I promise you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to get a report on our long-range facilities planning team.
Thank you. Good to see y'all. We're excited about this. This is going to be something that we talked about in the fall with you guys, and we've talked about a little bit in the spring. We are ready to kick this off and kind of wanted to come talk to you tonight. Really to kind of discuss what we're thinking, to gather feedback from you guys on a couple of areas, and to talk to you about our proposal of a long-range facilities planning team for Belton ISD. We, kind of the purpose of the committee or the purpose of the team that we're putting together is to have a partnership of district staff, parents, and community members, and really to act as in an advisory role to the district. So if you remember back in our bond exploration committee, that there was a very specific purpose of that committee, and that was to help us identify needs, prioritize those needs, and bring a recommendation back to the superintendent. This is gonna be more, and that was kind of a sprint. We started in September, and we ended in December, and then you guys went, did the actions that you took in January and February, and then we are where we are today. This is gonna be a little more of a longer race. It's gonna be we're gonna ask for a longer commitment from people on this team. We're gonna ask people to really come in and take deep dives. Before that they will advise the district, we're gonna analyze lots of data and really dig deep and make sure there's a good understanding of that data. We're gonna do some solutions-oriented work where we discuss potential solutions and go through all pros and cons, and then make recommendations back to the administration. So this committee is not something that will take the place of this committee. It won't take the place of some of the sprint type work when you got a very specific project, and we're gonna have design teams for some of these different projects that y'all just ask questions about, the Delta and the ag facility and the CTE and fine arts and the renovation. There will be just specific design groups for all of those projects. This is gonna be more of a global look at the district and tackling some of the down the road problems now and making sure that we've got some people that are invested in learning about these issues, talking through solutions, and then making recommendations. One of the things that we kind of envision on this is a meeting cadence where we meet several times throughout the year. So we like to look at some type of rhythm where we're meeting once over the summer. And we'll have to talk through that with some committee members, whether that's very early in the summer or later in the summer. I don't know that this will be a 4th of July week or anything like that. I don't know if our turnout will be great, but 2 meetings each fall, 2 meetings each spring. So in the course of a calendar year, you would have 5 meetings of the full team. But we also envision that there would be some, and talked about team composition here in a second, that there might be some subcommittee type work that goes on in between these big committees. So if we're tackling an issue, let's say playgrounds, for instance, which we really feel like we're fixing to be able to address some needs in our phase 3 of our playgrounds. But let's say we didn't have playgrounds included in the bond. And so this group might dig into the playground issues that we're having, dig into possible solutions, but there might be a work group that might meet in between the September and the November meeting that might come back with some more detailed information on playground solutions to the whole committee. Kind of the elements of this is some of the types of data and some of the types of things that this committee would look at is, a constant assessment of community growth and economic trends. So we would be looking at our demographic and economic trends, what's happening, what do we anticipate, the types of things that would lead to some down the road discussions and some down the road work. Updated facility assessments. So we had a detailed facilities assessment. We've shared many of those details with y'all in meetings at this facility. A lot of that work guided the work of our bond exploration committee and the projects that ultimately ended up on the ballot. As we go through and as we start to do that work and as we address other needs through whether it be our capital projects, through our M&O budget and things of that nature, we want this team to be able to dig into that and say, how does that facilities assessment data change as we do the work that was originally identified in that. District demographic information, that is something that it really informs the work of the board, and it really informs the work of most of our departments as we look at what is the anticipated growth, where's that growth going to come. It should guide our staffing, it should guide our future, our uses of current facilities and what we designate as future facilities. So we'll continue to take deep dives into the demographic information of the district. An instructional plan review, which includes an instructional framework and journey to graduate. We think it's really important that when we discuss facilities, that we discuss the impact and the needs that we have to support instruction. So really at the end of the day, I consider it an accomplishment and mission and a goal achieved if when we make an investment, we make an investment into things that are going to support what we're trying to do instructionally and what's going to support our journey to the graduate. So those types of discussions will be made and had with our committee as they go through and make decisions. And then finally, operational considerations and district goals. So things like transportation needs, furniture needs, special programs, school nutrition, technology, all of those types of things that may not directly impact capacity and instruction, but they connect to all of those support and operational considerations of the district. There are some things that this team will take a look at and dig into that. We did some of that with our process last fall, and so happy to say that we're going to be able to address some of our transportation needs through vehicles, through buses, and then as a result of our bond. But it would be a deeper dive into a lot of those different types of operational things and come back with some advisory decisions on things like cafeteria furniture, or cafeteria replacement, classroom furniture, those sorts of things as well. So a team composition. We envision, whereas the Bond Exploration Committee was made up completely of parents and community members, this is going to be a little more, we envision this team would be a little more like what we had in some of our design, like our elementary design group. That it does have parents, but it also has teachers, and it also has community members, and it also has district staff, so that we're able to have a standing team that has contributors or elements of all of those different groups. And then we also envision a contributor group where we do listen to bring in student voice on particular items and hear what our students have to say. Bring in specific district staff if it's an area that we have district staff that are community members that have expertise in. If we're talking about let's go back to playgrounds again, since that's one we've already addressed. But bringing in student and teacher voice. Bringing in voice from our special programs on what the playground needs of those students are and things as well. So that would just be the type of contributors that we may bring in. They may not be standing members, but they may be people that we bring in as experts, or maybe even work in a work group or a subcommittee on something that's going to come back and report to the full team. Couple of things that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight and kind of get y'all's input on is one, what's the right size for a group like this? I mean, we look.
I wrote it down.
If you look at districts that have done something like this, they call them a lot of different things. But if you look at districts that have taken on something like this, they tend to have a very wide range of how big the committees are. You see some that are on the smaller end. You see some that are on the really big end. You see some and so really that's one thing that we've been kicking around and haven't. I don't know that I'm ready to just come to you tonight and say, here's my recommendation or our recommendation. I really want to see how you guys feel about what's your gut feel of what is an optimal number. When you include all these groups, so when you want to have parent voice, you want to have teacher voice, you want to bring in community members that are invested and interested, and then you want to have appropriate district staff. What do you think? What's a productive size to get the work done?
I think we aim for 30 and hope we get 15. I mean, I think you aim for the larger number, and you're really not going to end up with that larger number. You're going to end up with a smaller number. I served on the Long Range Planning and Facility Committee for the city of Belton, and I believe there were only 12 of us, and at any given time, maybe half of that showed up. So.
I was going to say you've got 5 subgroups up there, 5 groups, parents, teachers, community members, district staff, students. I'd say you look for 5 or 6 from each category, because you're going to get about half showing up. So, 30 is about the right place to start. You got 5 from each category. That way, hopefully, you'll have at least a couple from each category that are going to be at each meeting to try to have that continuity. Because I know with our bond exploration, we started with 70 something, and by the time we got done, that last meeting was in the 30s, about 40 maybe. So I just think maybe that's kind of what I would maybe look at, maybe 5 from each group.
Okay.
I was thinking just, and our frame of reference was the bond exploration, because they went over so much information. I mean, I think that it was a large group and it did dwindle, but I think y'all are great about, you do whole group information, you did small group, like when we were at New Tech, because I think I got to go to about 5 out of the 7 of those meetings, but like when you went to New Tech, you had, we're in the business of education, so we know how to do that kind of stuff. So y'all would do small group sessions and how you worked that large group. So you got a lot of input. But I think probably the bond exploration, that size may be too big. I don't know, but I kind of like your idea about, breaking down each set of people, having, shooting for at least, that way you've got a good representation from each.
The key thing on that is that this is an advisory team for us as administrators. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this ties directly into goal 1 that you all set for us about increasing two-way communication with our community about topics that are important to us as a school district. So the more, to the point that all 3 of you have made, the more consistent we can have a group that can give us that feedback on a regular basis that knows this information well, I think the better equipped we are as an administrative team to bring you as a facilities committee the right recommendations.
That was gonna be my next question. What is this committee's involvement with this program? Are y'all just gonna come and report to us? Are we welcome to come and listen to the meetings? What is our role supposed to be?
You're always welcome to come listen to the meetings and stuff. This would be an administrative advisory group. So this is really for us to help your community voice, to help us bring the best recommendations to you all as a board. But you all know how that works. You're always welcome to come. And we wouldn't mind that at all. But ultimately, it's that group would not be bringing recommendations to you. They bring them to us as an administrative team to wrestle through and bring you the final recommendation.
And it may be a topic that has multiple solutions, and they help us take the data, get the feedback, and narrow it down to the best 2 or the best 3, and then bring that to y'all. Say, here's what we think the top 2 solutions are to this facilities issue. Now y'all weigh in and tell us what y'all think. So some of the ways that we've done it, where we bring y'all administrative recommendations all the time, but we're going to have a group that we're getting feedback from, and work groups to really dig deep to come back and help us bring you guys the best solutions that we can think of to some of the complex facilities issues we've been dealing with. So.
I know this is gonna be an advisory board, and this may be way over the top, but that's where my brain is.
Yeah.
So when you're asking these folks to join, just as kind of a, faith effort, do you ever think about having them sign like a commitment letter?
Yeah.
Because it's long range, and just as a token of, I commit to, being a part of this, blah, blah, blah. Just a
That's a good suggestion.
It is. It's a very good suggestion.
people tend to, hold tight to the things that they sign up for. If they sign their own.
I'm great.
Give them a t-shirt.
There you go.
I learned that when I was Booster Club president after the first year. The next year, I had 14 officers, and I gave everybody a shirt, and everybody kept showing up because they liked wearing their shirts, so.
I like that.
And feeding too.
Yes,
We
something
all-
that long range.
If I'm
plan,
involved,
so
we're gonna feed somebody, so we ate good in Booster Club, no doubt.
Kind of as a timeline on this, and that was my main question, was to really kind of get a feel from you guys on what sounds like the best number. Because I think you could get to a point, you're always gonna have some level of either atrophy or just people that have prior commitments. Whatever night you call a meeting on, everyone's busy and people have things. But as far as the meeting schedules, I think that one difference between them, when I think about like this versus the Bond Exploration Committee, that was a larger group, but we also met 8 times in 3.5 months. Yeah. And then this group will only be meeting about 5 times over a year with some more focused work in between for certain members. So hoping maybe by being spread out a little further, that commitment, that longer commitment where I say, yeah, I think I can do this. I think I could commit 4 or 5 afternoons or evenings a year to the project. I think we're hoping we can get that off the ground.
Yeah, like I said, just my opinion, if you've got the 5 or 6 subgroups, just pick 5 or 6 from each. The one that's gonna be interesting is gonna be the student. What ages do you pick? Sure. If you pick a senior, they're gone after the first year. Right. So what age group in high school do you pick? And something else that just something that struck me is part of the community members that you might want to get a couple of are former employees of our district, because they won't feel the restraints of, well, I've got superiors still, but they've been in the system, they understand the workings of the district.
Sure. And
they may, like Jim Deacon, someone like that, because he loves the Big Red community. But reaching out to maybe a couple of former employees might be a really good place to find. And I bet you those people will be the ones that'll show up every time.
That's a great suggestion. Any others? Any other thoughts? Final thoughts?
He's still on.
We're excited about it because when we've had opportunities, I mean, I think Matt just saw our elementary design group. I mean, our teachers and our parents are great, but we had a group of elementary teachers that were fired up to be on that group, and we had a group of students that were outstanding in the inside of the things they brought. So we envision that as we're able to work teachers and finding that right group of teachers and making sure that we have the right district staff on here, we think we're going to have a little different dynamic than that bond exploration committee and really have some engaged members of parents, teachers, community members, district staff. And that's a great idea to bring in former educators who really might have the time to invest in that. So that's fantastic.
Yep. I get an earful sometimes by my passenger and my co-pilot when we're driving places. And she was so excited about the design that she got to see. One of her comments to me was she said that the leadership of Belton really listened to the teachers and the kids this time, because it made sense when you looked at the layout and things like that. So that's what, I just can't tell people enough what I've witnessed happen over the last 2 years of transparency and community involvement is real. And you've listened and you've taken the words from these committees and these groups that you've gone to and these, whatever you call the things on the computer where they fill out all their stuff. It has been amazing, the level of transparency and community involvement that we've had for the last 2 years. And so I commend you guys on that, because I won't say anything.
We're excited about this. I believe I'm right, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been wrong a lot today too, but I believe I'm right. This is we're talking about this being a standing committee.
Yeah.
And so as this continues to move forward, that cadence year after year, having 5-6 meetings a year so that we keep our community group engaged and advising us well, I think will help us not only increase that transparency that you talked about, but also prepare us well for future bond elections, et cetera, because we're not having to do the split that we had to do this last time.
Now, will you create a hierarchy, like our leadership core for this group? Will there be a chairman, co-chairman? Will you run the meetings? How is that? What's that dynamic?
I don't know yet, but I think you should run the meetings. I don't necessarily know that we need a leadership a tree or anything like that. I do think that it will vary based on the different committees that Mike talked about. I imagine that we'll have some key leaders, and to Suzanne's point, one of the things that I hadn't thought about until now, but we may want to talk about like a rolling 2-year commitment. So half of them commit for 2 years and half of them, like you don't have everybody turn over every couple of years, so you have some consistency in that group. So we got some more to talk about.
Yeah. I'm all for it. I think it's a good idea.
We'll have more details for you, and kind of tonight was the first step in getting this feedback where we can start kind of putting pieces together and start reaching out and trying to secure members and try to get some commitments. So you'll sign those forms.
There you
You'll sign that commitment.
go. I'm retired, teacher's luncheon coming up, perfect opportunity.
That's right.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. All right, are there any issues, concerns for future agenda or administrative reports? No? 5:44.
Very good.